This is the Freud's Angels podcast.
I'm Vanessa, your intuitive counselor.
And I'm Grace, your spiritual guide. Our goal is to help you learn to blend your spiritual connection
And mental consciousness to give you clarity
and understanding to lead a life
of your choosing. Welcome.
We're glad you're here.
Hello, angels. Welcome, welcome. We are on episode 192 of the Freud's Angels podcast. Thanks for being here with us on this journey through time and space and today. I feel like we're recording this before Tuesday, which we all know what Tuesday is. And
Yes.
when this comes out, it'll be the day after. And so we will have experienced Tuesday. And I feel like we're all a little bit eggshelly. We're all a little bit kind of tiptoeing around being like, we don't know what's going to happen. Our world is going to change in one way or the other, our internal worlds and external. And so I feel like this topic is a really good one for that, because we experienced this, what we're about to talk about today, in all kinds of different places. But I've noticed that in the political space, we've been getting, it's been getting pretty intense, and in the world space, it's been getting pretty intense, and we got to get a handle on it. I mean, I just really feel like we got to get a handle on it because it's destructive. It has been destructive. Like we're just not using this properly.
And I think too is that there's so much fear-based, which valid. Hello. And quite a bit of anxiety myself and
Sure.
A little bit of fear, but it's those of us who have a clear understanding of some of the not so great things that may be coming or possibly be coming, and the fear of losing some of the stuff that we already have, like rights. It's like it's really impactful. And I think too is that we're spend so much time in fear since this whole election started way back last year, that in constant state of fear, we forget to have the hope card that we received this week for the reading. And we forgot to understand our power in the situation when we feel powerless, because we feel powerless, because we feel like we're at the whim of whatever happens and that we don't have power. And that's that chronic feeling makes us feel like it's all going to end. The world, we're all going to go,
This is it.
Yeah. And on both sides. And I'm not just talking about my sides. Like,
I think we're all in for it. Yeah.
It's both sides of the thing feel that the other person is going to end their freedoms in some way, shape, or form. And I think that both sides feel the same. It's very similar trauma on both sides. And
100%. It usually is.
Yeah. And I get it. Even if I don't agree, I understand the concept of what they're thinking and how they're feeling. And it's hard, man. It's hard because we don't understand the power is in the vote, in voting for who you feel is the right candidate. And B, like, there's so many other things that we can do outside of election time
1,000%.
that we can do to help heal some of what's happening, to help like really begin to I don't want to say wage the war, but to increase the pressure of keeping the rights that we have, or making changes in the places we feel we want change. There's possibility. There is.
Absolutely.
And friends, okay. And I know that y'all are like, my life is a lot, and you're wanting me to go fight for justice. Yes. Here's the thing. I get it. My human design, my theme is peace, anger, not self. And so I have a hard time being that protester, being that one that is fighting. But I will support, give you details, set up appointments. I will be the foundation constructor of that protest or of that needing for change. It's not just about being at the front lines of the protest. It's also about the people behind the scenes that are creating it and making it possible. Those are just as important as people who are proverbial or literally yelling down the, whatever. And so understand is that even if you feel you don't have the capacity or bandwidth to be one of those people, there's ways you can support them. There's ways you can help them. And so every part, every energy towards fighting for the rights that you feel is valid and you want to fight for, it's valid, and your part in the even just the smallest piece is important because it doesn't take.
Well, yeah.
Go
I was
ahead.
waiting.
I didn't
I was
want to cut you
interrupting,
off.
and I was like, "Stop interrupting!" And so I was waiting for you to finish your sentence because I
Okay.
jumped in way fast. Like I was like, "There's two more words coming out. I know it. Just let her say them."
Okay. We stop and stare at each other like, go ahead, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was like, "Oh my god, we're recording the podcast. Speak." No, I was just thinking, like, like the Underground Railroad was supposedly so small. Look how big it actually was. You know what I mean? It was just people helping people because they believed in whatever it was. And it had nothing to do with the actual, like, we're going to change the government. It was like, we're just going to help our people. And so
Yeah.
I really think that is like, to me, that's my more major theme than anything when it comes to life is like, how can we just, if more people do nice things for each other, then it won't really matter what else is going on because the tide turns that way, right? Like it changes because it has to change, right? We don't force the change by following what we are told to follow. We force the change by embodying what we've decided is better. And so like that's why I'm kind of like, yes, the protesters are good because they're loud, and I'm not one of them either, but I am 1,000% one of those people that goes and does things and shows people and is like, hey, you could do it, and like lets people do that. So it's like an example. We need examples, we need fighters, we need all the different facets of it because we're gonna, no matter what, I think everybody's in agreement that when it comes to how the structure of, at least here in the United States, our country is, nobody's happy. Like nobody's happy at a personal level. So it's way beyond party lines and very much in government overreach everywhere.
Yes.
And like so those are the way more important things, right? Like so if we're sick and tired of the food being poisonous, we're the ones that are going to have, like, that has nothing to do with the election, y'all. Like, and that is major for our health, and that is major for us. We are going to have to do something by setting examples for each other and having conversations with each other to be able to starve them of our money and our attention so that will force their hands. To me, way more important than fighting over basically sports teams at this point, because that's what it is. I mean, it is the Red Sox Yankees right now.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not Red Sox Yankees people, it is a fierce battle. People go to jail sometimes fist fighting over a sports team. We're at that point politically. It's embarrassing. But
Yeah.
if we take it back down to the personal roots community level, there are way more important things that we actually have way more influence over than we think. And if we want to do that, then we actually have to take government out of it ourselves by doing it on our own. So, I mean, I think that it kind of is on topic because we're talking about what to do with our sacred rage.
Fun times.
Yeah.
And one other thing too is that as you were talking, Vanessa, and I'm like, absolutely right. And one of those key things is, as an energy worker, as a person who helps people process energy and what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, I mean, those people that are at the front lines that are working to gather people and to create change and protest and or whatever way that it is, like it doesn't have to necessarily be picket lines, but you can support them by offering them your service or helping in that way. It's about supporting what you need to support in the way that you support them. So, yeah, and just allowing, I don't know, the possibility of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel helpless sometimes too because I see all this really horrible like disservice to so many people and communities and I want to make change, but I also know that I can't get caught up in the rage of it
Yeah, 100%.
because it's
That's
disruptive. And not that I'm not angry, but there's a difference between anger and like having an anger and having a concern and having a like this is wrong and raging. Like there's a little bit of a difference. Not all, but a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. Well, and channeling it, right? Like when we talk about our emotions and we were like, oh, they're messengers, we're like, well, we still have to do something with
Yeah.
it. Right. Like you can't just be like, hi, and then it just goes away because we talk to it
Yeah.
sometimes, but most of the time we really, like we're being called to some sort of action to either change the belief system or go get whatever it is that we need to change that. And when it comes to like the whole raging thing, I mean, we have to be able to channel that into intentional action because y'all, when we talk about this, and I'm going to say it out loud because whatever, um, people are always just kind of like, oh, wars. And I'm just like, well, men like, they're just aggressive and angry and they've been in charge for all the time. And so it's not really a surprise that we've had this many wars because they don't know how to do anything without fighting. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And they're still learning. We're learning, right? But for the longest time, and that's why we keep perpetuating some of these cycles of like rage means war, and rage means war, and anger means that I have to win and I have to beat you and we have to fight and all that kind of stuff. And so, like, I see that just kind of continues to be the theme because it's been the theme. That's been, what supposedly works, but when we actually look around, we're like, it has not worked at all. It's actually ruined the human experience as we know it. And so what do we do to turn the tide, right? Like, so we're going to be angry, but how do we channel that energy into something that actually makes a difference? Because I think that, again, like when we talk about that and we're like, if you go historically, we have not made the differences. All of these wars and raging and all that kind of stuff has not made a difference. It has drawn lines. It has not made a difference in the human experience. So let's try something else. So let's try to take our rage and do something with it. Hey, I'm angry about it. What's the actual answer that makes this go away? Usually it's love of some sort, and we're just trying to figure out what it is, right? So yeah, I feel like that's what we're going to have to do regardless of, because there's going to be a lot of unhappy people, and we're just going to have to learn how to be a people together of like, well, let me soothe your wounds, or let me soothe my own wounds of, well, what is it that this anger is here to tell me I'm afraid of? And then we just go be change makers, because y'all, they can't see us all. I believe this 1,000%. It's impossible for them to see us all always. And so there will always be people who are unwilling to conform, and they create the underground. The underground will never not exist. So that's where I lie, and being like, well, I'll find the underground and I'll be that underground because I don't care. Like that I'm good at. I'm good. So I feel like the more we talk about that, though, the better people are going to feel, right? Like, because we can channel our anger into how do we make the change happen, not how do we try to make other people change. How often do we talk about this, right? I can't make other people change, but I can change how I do things in order to get whatever it is that I think I need, or that what other people need. So stop beating our heads against the government door and start beating our heads against, well, what do people need? What do people need? Let's go give it to them. So I have to tell you all a story, guys. I went out on Friday night, which I never do. And I was out at a bar, which no longer my scene. And I'm in the South, guys. I'm in South Carolina. And my favorite thing of the night was this openly gay African American couple showing up in this space full of people that if you stereotype the South, this is not a safe place. It was a safe place, and people made it a safe place. And if there were people that were uncomfortable, we didn't see it, because it was not safe to be an unsafe person in that environment. And to me, it was extremely encouraging because I do live in the South. So to me, it felt like if I'm in that good space, and if I'm being an example, and all these other people here continue to be an example in real life situations and start making the people uncomfortable that would have made people like this uncomfortable, then that's how the change is actually going to happen. Not by some person who's completely out there saying, don't do it. That's
Yeah.
not going to work. It's going to be us as a group of people saying that does not fly here. We do not do that anymore. And if you
Yeah.
want to go do that, you're not welcome here. And that is like kind of my example of that sacred rage thing of being like, okay, what do we do about it? We circle around whoever it is that we love and want to be loved, and we make it very uncomfortable for the people who can't do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like that, like saying it is like, yeah, like being angry isn't the skill.
No.
Being angry and being full of rage isn't the skill that we're looking at right here. It's what do we do to take that great energy, because it's so fiery, and put it where the change can be made.
And I think too, an asterisk as well, is that understanding how we feel, what is the fire under the rage, like, right? What is the, because it's rage can be a hot flash, but I also think rage is very much a slow burn. And if we understand what we've been convinced of that causes that rage, we can question whether or not it's not about validity, it's about knowing where you want to spend your energy.
Mhm.
Because in these times, whilst it feels very urgent because of some of the things and some of the changes that are happening, sometimes there are things we're taught to believe that we don't have power. And
Mhm.
rage comes from powerlessness.
Mhm.
And so we have to examine and try to help ourselves see, where do we have power, because we do,
We
but
do.
it's discovering it, and like and then taking that understanding of it and into the depths, like Vanessa said, into the depths of how can I channel this into a really effective way to make change, or to do my part in supporting that change. Because
Mhm.
blind rage, if you think about blind rage, is destructive.
Yes.
And so if you enter into that space of blind rage, it's there is a sense of a disconnect from your, I don't want to say values, but kind of in a sense of your personality and who you are and what you stand for. You begin to enter into the space of the thing you're angry about. If we see it all the time, we see somebody who's angry because somebody did something to them, but they're in such a blind rage, they do that and perpetuate it onto somebody else, making them very similar to the person that hurt them. And
Yeah.
so it's also about understanding. Now, no one wants to be angry. Y'all, I've spent the last 4 days in a very up and down sense of rage, anger, whatever, that I don't like to be in. I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
And and I know it's, for me, it's part of my process and trauma processing, because when I was very young, there was a lot of rage and a lot of anger, and it wasn't received, and it wasn't considered, and it wasn't heard. And so I just stuffed it all down in there. And I have a feeling, in processing some of this stuff, that rage and anger is showing up, because it's like, wee, the door's open.
Yeah. Let's
And-
get it before she shuts it.
yeah, quick, quick. and and thanks to, like, Vanessa and both of my therapists, and helping me process and see it from a different perspective, because there's a fear that comes, because I've come from an alcoholic stepfather, like an abusive household, where when that person was angry, we had to hide, like it was fear-based. And so my relationship with anger is not one of, oh, it's a valid emotion. It's one of,
Yeah.
holy fuck, who's going to get harmed? This is not good. And then when I feel it internally, there's a connection to me and that person that gave me that
Mhm.
example, and that, am I going to be just like them? Am I that person? Does my
Mhm.
anger make people be afraid? Am I going to harm somebody because I'm angry? Like, as an adult,
Yeah.
I understand and rationalize that person was under the influence. There was so many more other things that happened, but that little part of me that was affected by that person gets super afraid when I get angry, because it doesn't want me to lose control.
Yeah, because you
Right?
already have, right? Like once we enter into that, we're like, it's like our whole body is going, well, now it's not me. I don't know what's going to happen then. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I'm not me right now, so good luck. Like,
All bets
no,
are
no,
off.
no, we're not into that. We are not into like, hey, I've entered into a new body. Let's see what happens. Like, no, no, no. Right? Like we already automatically know, like, you are not yourself, and that's scary. That's really scary.
It is. And part of that is not, I don't want to say make friends with it, but yeah, kind of make friends with it and almost hear what it has to say. Because in some cases, in my case, and I can't speak for everybody because I'm not everybody, but in my case, rage came from an imbalance of fairness in my life. And
Mhm.
that's where my rage and my anger came from. And the person that was at the forefront of my rage and anger just would never acknowledge it, never even acknowledge it, even when it was like screamed in their face, like
Yeah.
as a, and so because of that hurt and that imbalance, there's a sense of feeling unloved or whatever. And so, and part of the processing of it is part of knowing that where the volatility in me comes from and not getting rid of it like I want to because it's so fucking uncomfortable,
Mhm.
but stepping into the idea of, okay, I accept all the other pain, sadness, depression. I sit down with those parts and talk to them, but I found myself kind of unwilling to talk to my anger and my rage. And it
Right.
was like, oh,
Right.
but
Well, because
it,
anger likes to amp itself up, right?
yeah,
Like when we talk to it, it's like, yeah, yeah. And we're like, no, that's not what we came. We didn't come here to get like to join anger.
yeah, it is.
But somehow I'm here. I'm justified and I'm ready to rage. Like I came here to talk to you, not to beat you.
I did not sign up for this.
Exactly. Right? Because we're face to face with the injustice of whatever made us angry. And so of course it's gonna be really hard to invalidate that.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah.
So it's, and I think that there's the part that I think we miss in understanding our anger and our rage is that, well, at least me, I don't know about anybody else, but me, I don't want to sit, I don't want to be in it because it feels uncomfortable. There's fear that exists in that anger. There is this sense of, that belief that everybody says, you always hurt the ones you love. I don't want to hurt the ones I love. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so there's all those belief systems and fear-based things that are showing up when I am in anger that it's hard. But that's what I pay my therapists for, you know?
Yeah.
But I think too is that when we make those connections and make that understanding, when that shows up, you're less likely to go outside of your body, and you're more likely to kind of see it happening and not allow it to get from uh, like flashpoint. Like it's now in DEFCON 10, and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, everything's like out of
Yeah.
control.
Right? Like and our nervous system is saying that we're not safe. And so when we get to that level, we have to fight, right? Like it's like there is no other option. Like fawn, you can't we're not going to find fawn in the middle of our blind rage because then we will die. You know what I mean? Like our brain is like death, right? Like
Yeah.
we have to fight at that point when we get there. And so, like I was telling Grace in the pregame, I got to have a visit from ghosts of boyfriends past, and that actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm going, now I know why it happened, and now I know why it happened that way because I saw my first Muppet Christmas Carol carousel on Instagram last night. So I was in the Scrooge energy. And then I had this dream. I had this dream about past relationships and people triggering the shit out of me that I would get angry and fight with them. Right. And in this dream, it was very clear to me that the exercise was not to fight. And it was almost like being, taunted to fight over and over again. And I was like, and I woke up this morning and I was like, oh god, that's so annoying. You know what I mean? Like it's so annoying, but I was like, I get it. Like I know that I continually need to work on this in the moment because I'm pretty good at avoidance. We know this. I'm pretty good at running, but in the moment when I've chosen to be there, I'm still learning how to not let like anger take over. But which then brought me, and this is like welcome to the fun train of my brain, because this is how I woke up this morning. Um, I was like thinking about anger management, and I've obviously, been doing therapy or counseling for a decent amount of time now, and I've had to run anger management courses. Had to, meaning that I was forced to do it, and I was given a program that I had to follow, like a packet slash workbook. And each time there was 2 or 3 times that I had to do this specifically, where people were ordered for anger management and I was there to give it to them. And it was horrible and terrible and ineffective, because it was all symptom management. It was all, you just can't do that. You just can't, you got to walk away, or you have to, use I statements. It was just like the symptom management. Not to say that these are not great tools, but symptom management is no good in any of the spaces. We've talked about this so much. We talk about it in the medical field. It's not good. And so I was thinking about the people that did, because there were some that did get some help. And I was like, yeah, but those were the people that, like, I liked them, they liked me, we chatted, we talked, we lost the anger management part of it and allowed ourselves to be in the actual counseling space. And I was like, that's the problem. The problem is that the roots of the anger are belief systems, and belief systems are never touched. I shouldn't say never. It's a blanket statement. I have not been in the anger management field to know if they've done better, but I'm guessing not, since everybody's still angry, and acting out. Probably still haven't like cracked the code yet. But like, that's where it is, because when people start raging, it's because they believe that they're right and that they're being invalidated. And like you said, the power dynamic has shifted. In some
Yeah.
instances, yes, right? Like in some instances, absolutely, somebody's trying to gain power over us. Our rage is like right there to be like, hell no. In so many instances, it is a belief system that I hold simply because I have it and it was installed in me. And I am ceasing to believe that there could be anybody else that has a different experience. And I need to feel safe. So I need to make my experience your experience, because it's super scary for another experience to be possible. And that sounds silly when you say it out loud, but that's what your brain is doing, or else you wouldn't fight it. So with me, I feel like personally, what I had to do, and I was never really a rager, like, obviously, but like, I'm uncomfortable with anger as well. I don't like it. But the thing that made me be able to be less angry is that thing that I talk about all the time: curiosity over confrontation. I want to know why I am angry. I want to know why you're angry, because our wounded parts of ourselves are the parts that we got to talk about, right? So if we're fighting about something, and we have to know that we are both operating from belief systems that are so deep within us. But then we have to really think about, is that belief system one that I really want to have? And I've had to do this a lot with parenting, where I would get upset about something and I would go, is this really that important? Do I really need to make a core memory of anger about this for my child? And
Mm.
like, y'all, like 90 something percent of the time, it is a no. I don't need to be angry. I don't need to have an anger response, because that my anger response comes from, you did it on purpose. And like, oh my God, most people are not doing things on purpose. Right? Like, so many people are acting from reaction. And once you realize that, once you really internalize that and allow yourself to pause and go, that person probably is just reacting. Okay, maybe I don't need to respond back in that way. And so, long story short, came back around to me and the anger management thought, and being like, yeah, we have to work harder on tolerance, curiosity, understanding of different everything, right? Because that's my philosophy all the time. And that's why people are like, oh my God, are you really that chill? I'm like, yeah, most of the time, because like, I don't want to be angry. And I also realize that when I'm angry, it's because I believe I know everything about
Yeah.
this situation. And now I have to tell that person how it is. And like, that's not true. I know everything about it for me, I think. And if I actually dig in deep, sometimes I don't even know. I'm just acting from what somebody taught me, and I don't even want to do it. Right. So that's been like to me, the biggest thing is that internal conversation with myself of like, why am I mad? Why am I this raging? Oh, because it's not fair. Why isn't it fair? Well, because they shouldn't. Why do I think that they shouldn't do whatever? Like why is my way the only right way?
Yeah.
And like, okay, well, because it's the best way, because it's the nice way. Like, okay, are they intentionally not being nice to you? Do you think that they really want you to feel hurt right now? And that's why they did that?
Mm,
No. Like,
mm,
okay. So maybe I can just stop and not fight back because I don't really like now I'm confused. I have no idea what's happening. And so I don't want to perpetuate something that I don't actually know what's happening. So, and that's just one example. There's multiple ways that I've had to do it over and over and over again so that I get to the point where when somebody does something most of the time, and there's still some exceptions, I'm kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? Like my question, like before I even get like, roar, I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I'm like, I don't know why. Whoa, and my brain will start to be like, maybe somebody did that to them. Like it's like when people joke and they're like, are you analyzing me? It's like, not in the way you think.
yeah.
I am not analyzing you to diagnose you. I am analyzing you for my own safety and yours. Like sometimes to just be like, I don't want to, what could happen? What could make a person do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Well, maybe I can let that go then because they're not being themselves right now, clearly. You know what I mean? And like me fighting with their not self is not going to help. It's not going to do anything. Why would
Right.
I do that? That doesn't make any sense now that I've talked about it and allowed myself to pause. So that was my long-winded way of explaining how I have handled anger for myself and continue to. I try, right? Like I try. If somebody
Oh,
triggers me, I'm like, what's happening right now? And
yeah.
sometimes I'm imperfect. Sometimes I'm like, "Ugh," and then I'm like, that happened before my consent. So it's not a perfect process where, you just float through life and things don't anger you. I do get angry, but I've found that it's so much less since I've been like, oh, all I need to do is find solution. So let's like just know that we're here and find the real problem first.
Yeah. Or
And just
know when you're in a situation, if you're with another person, it's at another person,
yeah.
and having discernment of knowing whether that's possible or not, right? Because you don't want to spend energy that is not going to change it because that person is too in their rage and in
Right.
their anger or in the situation that you have to either exit the chat or
Mhm.
make movement to do what you can do in that moment. And and I don't know, I'm probably repeating myself, but the understanding of and connecting with it is the important part, is what leads you to be able to do these things.
Mhm.
Because when I'm upset, and this occurred this weekend, and I'm angry or I'm upset or I'm triggered, sometimes my like ability to understand, see, and stop go away. Like
Mhm. Yeah,
it's like
supposed to.
it's like all the things that I use to be able to do those things can sometimes leave because I haven't practiced allowing my anger to show up, because it blindsides me, because I don't want it. It hasn't been a part of my life. I haven't allowed it to be part of who I am. Anger is always generally looked at as the negative emotion, but it is not. It's just a sign, a symptom, not even a
Mhm.
symptom, but like a flag saying,
Mhm.
hello, there's something not right here. Pay
Yeah.
attention. But and in creating that connection and being able to have, you know, that autonomy over your anger, and it's we can't if I well I feel in my I can't until I've had time to sit with it and sit with the how it makes me feel, and allow my nervous system to realize having anger doesn't mean we're going to die.
Yes. Or
And
somebody else is gonna die
right.
at my
That
hands because I'm
too,
not myself.
believe me. That too. Or you're not gonna, like, lose your shit on your pet or something, like, like when she knocks over your candle holder and breaks it and then continues to push over her water dish onto the floor, onto the new carpet. So, yeah.
Practice
Y y
opportunities.
I tell you what, there's been a lot this week.
Yay.
And
I'm gonna be so good at this.
I'm going to be in such great connection with my anger. It's going to be unbelievable. Um, but it's not easy. And I know that, friends. It's just, it can be a lot. It can be a lot depending on the relationship we have with anger, but it's important. It's
Yeah.
important work because it's not even work. It's important understanding of yourself because when you can understand the dynamics of your relationship with your anger, I don't want to say there's a mastery, but there's a deep understanding of your emotional components, right? There's
Mhm.
a deep understanding of how what things matter to you and what things don't matter. And maybe it's a sign of, oh my gosh, like I don't really care about this situation, but it brought up me feeling like I did when I was 12 and like I was afraid because I was going to get hurt or punished or there was inequality in my life somewhere. Like it's knowing those things gives you the ability to step into neutral observer. We're going to bring that in again because we've been doing it since we started this podcast, but
Important.
it's that idea of stepping back and seeing the whole situation from a space of like not that you're not feeling emotions, but that space of like what is this, is how I'm reacting in my anger helping the situation or is it fueling the situation and creating a bigger divide?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like I think there's a lot of as you were talking, I was thinking of the people that are like it's so hard for them to let go, of the
Mhm.
like this is but they did this to me. But like there's like this whole like injustice discussion that goes along with it. But the goal, being in mind of peace, you know, I think sometimes is really helpful when we think of, kind of going back again, like historically, we have been taught, we continuously taught to use anger as a tool to regain control of situations and self and whatever. But if you actually think of other parts of history, it has not been the way. And sometimes that can enter the chat, of like,
Yeah.
wow, well, it wasn't always that way in certain groups of people or certain cultures, where like if you were acting out like that, that was not okay. Like it was more about like, wow, like we don't dishonor our feelings, but we also don't dishonor other people. Like we can't do that because of only us, right? Like it was seen as like a self-centered act,
Yeah.
to be like rageful and trying to gain power over people. So, there is really, I think, the case to be made for like we have misappropriated anger, its cause and its purpose.
Yeah.
And it's time to kinda take that back, right? Like of, when I would do these anger management classes, I would talk to them and I would say, well, it made me mad. Okay, but what it made you mad, but anger was the secondary emotion. What did it make you feel first? Well, I was mad. No, no, no. I know that you were mad, but what other feelings words did you have? And I would have to break out the feelings wheel, which I have it in my phone and sometimes I send it to people. Sometimes I send it in session, like just to kind of be a little snarky, like I'm going to send you something, you got to pick a different word. Um, but like, because sometimes people don't understand frustration or hurt or embarrassment creating anger or
Yeah.
jealousy creating anger or you know what I mean, or something traumatic like you said, like from like 12 years old being like, oh, fear has created anger within me because I got afraid and I felt like anger, my brain felt like anger was the way to handle the fear because
Uh,
if I
yeah.
cried out of fear I would be prey, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I had to do something strong instead of doing something soft. And it's like, oh, okay. So, we would start to have better conversations, and they would start to communicate better with people, and they would find that they would have less arguments when they were using the correct words for how they were feeling. I'm like, you know what? I'm
Yeah.
so embarrassed that that happened. Right, is
Yeah.
so much different than I'm so pissed that the sidewalk was there, or like whatever. You know what I mean?
What the hell? That crack made me trip. Fuck
Yeah,
that crack.
exactly. Who fucking designed this place? Like, what is happening? You're embarrassed because you tripped over a thing. Like, just call it what it is and let's be done with it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to do that, but it's that protective of self, right? Like, so I was embarrassed, and embarrassment and shame has been something that I've been taught is not okay to have. So, but it is okay for me to have anger. So I can have anger right now. And so anger is the thing that I allow it to come out as an expression versus a pure emotion. So
Well, and I think too is that when things like that happen and connecting to that, like there's a mortification that happens that we're afraid people will laugh at us in some way. Like when we're in those vulnerable moments where, people are like, they just laugh at themselves. They don't have that sense of sensitivity. And so when you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I'd be completely mortified. And like, cause, and just being like, just I'd rather be angry because it protects me, like you're saying, and gives that sense of like, you can't make fun of me because I'm already angry, and if you start to make fun of me, I will clap back at you and just completely like shut you down in rage, and it's no,
yeah, and
totally,
the
totally
actual
feel it.
conversation, right? Like the
Yeah,
actual conversation is I care very much about what other people are saying about me,
yeah,
right? And that's my actual wound. My actual wound is that the way that people look at me is the way that they treat me. And the
yeah,
way that they treat me is my safety in this world, right? And when we zoom back out to kind of be like, I don't want that, right? Like, I don't want that because that means that they take my power away. How do I navigate that, right? Like, and it's a very tricky process for each person, but the example that I was giving you, it's really funny because I was thinking the other day about there was a time where I was running. This was way back in college, and I was working at Market Basket in Andover, Massachusetts.
Market
Um,
basket.
Market
Sorry.
Basket, the bucket. Man, I still love that place. And I was with my cousin. I remember I was wearing, I'm pretty sure I was wearing a Kingswood football or my Kingswood cheerleader jacket or something. It was definitely my green windbreaker. And I fell in front of the store window,
Oh
right?
God.
Like, so everybody I worked with, all the cashiers and baggers saw me trip and fall. And I like did this thing. My cousin was with me, and I laugh thinking about it now. My cousin was with me. I did like this weird roll thing, like, so I was okay. I don't know how I didn't, because I was running really fast, and I just like ass over tea kettle, and I was so embarrassed. Like, I was like so embarrassed. Oh my God, everybody's gonna whatever. Now, when I look back at that, it's so funny to me because I'm like, what did I think people were going to use against me in the future that was actually going to do something to my life
Yeah.
because they saw me fall? That I was so afraid of how they felt. Like, what did I think they were going to do to me? Did I think they were going to take away all my friends ever in my life because I had a
Yeah.
clumsy moment? Like, how weird is that now to look back and be like, they never had that power anyway,
Yeah.
but like, I didn't have the awareness then to know that. I didn't have the ability to know that. And that's why, like, when I have stories like that, when I work with people who have like, big, big wounding around what other people think, I'm kind of like, yeah, we really have to go into your belief system deep, deep, deep to find out how you think they're actually going to ruin your life, because that's it.
Yeah.
Or else you wouldn't care because you'd be like, your opinion doesn't matter. Who are you in my life? Unless
Those
you're like my, have control of my bank account, I don't think I care.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, aspirations, right? Because I am one of those people. I am deeply one of those people. And I struggle with that hardcore. And you're right. It's like it's that idea of that part of us that feels that sense of like, oh my God, they're gonna like ruin my life. It's that, yeah, it's understanding it and understanding what it's trying to tell you and step into that. Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
each moment, it can be very different, right? Because
Yeah.
like if I fall on the ice, it really does matter.
Yeah.
My teammates need me to not do that.
Yeah.
They really need me to be on my
Yeah.
skates and be doing what I need to do, right? So
Yeah.
but that's a different kind of feeling that I get, right? Like that's a different kind of like, oh God, they're going to be upset at me, right? Like, and so in that assessment, it's like, yeah, dude, get your shit together. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're part of a team. You've made you know what I mean? So
Yes.
there's that different conversation to be had of whether or not it is important. You know,
Yeah.
it is important to me that my teammates can trust me. So yes, I will take that seriously. And yes, I will allow that emotion to come in to tell me to get my shit together
Yeah.
because I want it together and it matters. But
Yeah.
in other
And
places, doesn't matter.
each place, it's funny because each place means something different. Like because as you were talking, I'm examining all the places where, like for example, online, like I don't care. I'm a hot mess half the time. I'm just throwing up videos. I enjoy it and it makes me happy. And I don't really care. I mean, I don't post a lot on social media on my pages because of that fear, but for the most part, I'm like, whatever. I'm showing up because that's what I want to do. But if I think about, like, say for example, I was walking in public and I tripped or fell, or that one time, oh my gosh, Vanessa, this is a great example. That one time I was at a restaurant and their chairs were really old, and that chair leg, because I went to push it out to stand up, broke, and I ended up on the floor, and
Mm,
everybody just stared at me. Nobody came to help except for somebody from another part of the restaurant came over to help me. And even the waitress stood there and looked at me. And it's those moments, and I understand because I left that restaurant and I went home and I allowed myself to cry and be terrified in my bed and I sobbed and I'm like, you're right, but you're safe. There is that there is a fear, and
mhm.
but it's so different in different places, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
Very interesting, right? Like it's
Yeah.
but that's us needing to know ourselves very well and
Yeah.
be able to like how do we know ourselves? We have to learn how to ask ourselves questions that get us to the real point because we'll stop anytime we're satisfied.
Yeah.
Right? Like, which is why
Right.
a lot of people stop at surface level because it's not right. Like but that does not fly in my counseling
Mhm.
space. I'm like, "Well, why isn't it right? Why are you right? Is there anybody else that could be right?" Like,
Yeah.
right? Like, who was right before you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because yeah, like there's a lot of stories in there that are very deep, 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 and some of them are true, right? Like, and they are true things that happened where we're like, that was true then, it's not true now, is like the new conversation of saying, yes, people did ruin our lives, right? Like because of how they felt about us. They did take our friends away. That did happen. So I'm not gaslighting myself to say it doesn't happen.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that is not the case today. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like,
Right.
listen, when this comes in, you got to sit down because you are 12 years old.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, we're not 6 getting off the bus and
Yeah,
falling and
yeah,
everybody
like,
laughing at us on the
yeah,
playground.
yeah, you are
Yeah.
46 years old. These people can't do shit to you, come on, right? Like, they can't control you like they did in tiny Ossipee Central School. You know what I mean? Like, and even then, you know what I mean? Like, when I think about, like, when you go back and you think about your younger self, you're like, there were a few things that maybe would have made things a little bit easier. Like, that wounding wouldn't be there if I had a little bit of support in this area, you know what I mean? So you can see the value of, like, well, that wouldn't have been a wounding, but it is, so we go right back into our like, it is.
Yeah.
And so we're healing it. But yeah,
Yeah. It's fascinating, but there's so many depths and places to go deep with this and so many places to go on discovery missions and curiosity adventures to see, it's really less about understanding it and understanding your rage, whether it's sacred or whether it's blind rage or whether it's just a little bit of anger. It's important. It obviously was important to you, but I think the message underneath it is more important to understand why you're reacting in that way and what it's telling you versus, the fact that it's actually happening, right? It's more of a why do I react this way? Why, when my cat decided to break everything and push water off the table, like, why did I go into this massive anger rage moment and like what was behind that? and
Yeah.
it wasn't just the Scorpio new moon, right? It wasn't just because we're in
Yeah,
Scorpio.
yeah.
It was like there's something
Right?
different
That
there.
helped. But
That allowed it to
yeah.
come a little bit faster.
Right. And why do I think, right? Like, and I think that this is the most important part about when we talk about sacred rage, because you put that word sacred in there and people are like, yeah, carte blanche. Like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. It doesn't mean you can go do shit because you're mad and you're like, it's sacred. Like, it is like, honor the reason why it's there, but your behavior still can't be that you can go control people or go make people pay, or you know what I mean, like, because that continues to be the, oh, I'm in a power struggle, that means that they have my power. And it's weird to say that, right? Like, because I can they really take my power? Only if I let them. Most
Yeah.
people, right? Like most people. I mean, we get into some different conversations and yeah, you know what I mean? Like we know that that can happen, but at the same time, like most of the conversations that we're actually having, no, you know what I mean? But they
Yeah.
have, right? And so if I'm on this mission to go use my sacred rage to go tell them how it is and what they did wrong and make them pay and make them admit to what they did, like that is just them having you on a string. You are
Yeah.
no longer, you are not powerful. All they have to do is say no and they keep your power. Like, come on, man. Like, that's not what we want. That's not what your rage came here to ask you to do. Your
Yeah.
rage came here to ask you to heal the thing that makes it show up. And that is not in the hands of another person,
Yeah.
it's in
It's like,
yours.
yeah. And it's funny because it reminds me of my neighbors that there's a little bit of a battle between a couple of my neighbors, and that a while ago, maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, they would play their music really, 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 really loud, and the person that lives next door to them would get really, 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 really angry, and they're really angry because they kept complaining, and the park
Mm,
won't do anything about it, and he called the cops, and there was this constant rage and constant
mm.
rage. Well, now that months pass, it got better because a person left and then they came back, and so now that there's this reawakening of that rage, it's not even about what is happening in this moment, it's about what happened then and how it's fueling what happened now. And I'm like, I don't know that I want somebody to control my emotions like that.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to, because I experienced that when I lived in Vancouver. Like, I battled with that rage because of the lack of care and consideration of being on the second floor, and just the almost like purposeful stomping and throwing things down, and especially at time when you go to bed, and it was like, I understand it, but I also am like, I don't know that I want somebody to control my feelings like that. Like,
100%. Yeah.
I don't need somebody to make me angry at the drop of a hat and be able to let me lose control. Like, that's the control we can have, is over ourselves. Like, we don't have control over situations. And yeah, it's not that it doesn't upset me or make me angry, but what expectation am I having, and
Mm,
what am I making meaning of the situation, and
yeah.
why is it so personal? And if it is
Yeah.
personal, then what can I do to either leave the situation or make change in the situation? And not because I can't control other people, I can only
Yeah.
control myself.
What can I
And
really do and what am I willing to do and what am I
yeah,
willing not to do?
yep, yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's hard. It's this, this topic is one of those tricky topics, I think, for people. And
Mhm.
because they have different relationships, and it's that idea. We did a podcast a bit ago about needing or need to be right all the time, and I think that fits very much in line with what
Yeah.
anger and rage starts from: the need to
Yeah.
be right, and the
Oh,
need.
100%, right? Because something's telling us that something's wrong,
Yeah.
right? Or else it wouldn't be that. It would be something else that comes in. If it was right, we'd be like, "Hey," like
Yeah.
camaraderie, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard, right? Like, but I think that that's, for people like me who are very much like, I need my freedom. That is one of the most major things of me trying to regulate my nervous system is I got very tired of like, if I want to be free, I need to stop letting people control me. And that was like, bing, right? Like, and it was again, Wayne Dyer being like, nobody can hurt you without your permission. I was like, fuck off. And then I thought about it and I was like, oh my God, he's right. Right? Like there is a thing within me that lets it happen.
Yep.
because people are gonna people, and I can't control all the people to make them stop peopling. That's
Yeah.
impossible. So what am I gonna have to do instead? What is my alternative? Learn how to deal with the people. Got it. Learn how to not let them control you and your emotions. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And in some situations, and this is why it's tricky, people are constantly, because we're so busy and we're so overstimulated and our nervous systems are shot, we're looking for, like, we want those blanket things. We want to be able to be like, listen, everybody follow this rule and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Right. Because we don't want to do the variable shit. Like, we don't want to be like, in this position, it's this, and in this situation, it's that. And in this, like, we don't want to have the mental energy of assessing each situation. We just want things to be cut and dried. We want A, B, C, because we don't have time for maybe A, maybe C now, maybe, like, we don't have time for that. So we want
Yeah.
everything to be uniform, and it's not possible. And that's the thing that, like, if I want anybody to understand life, it is that there is zero sameness. And you have to get okay with it. You have to, or else you're going to be miserable trying to make everybody be what you want them to be, or make
Yeah.
them think what you want them to think. It's not possible.
So people's careers in social media is built off of that,
Yeah, I know.
telling everybody that they're going to fix their problem, and they
I
never
know.
do.
I
And
know.
and so it's like,
I know. Because
yeah,
I end up, I don't compete with them, but I feel like that becomes the competitive space of it, of being like, well,
right.
I'm not gonna tell you that. So if you want somebody that's gonna tell you that they're gonna fix your problems for you, then you're gonna go over there and you're gonna see what it is. I'm gonna tell you that we're gonna try, we're gonna do our best, but you're gonna have to work really hard, you're gonna have to change, you're gonna have to think different things than you were taught,
Yep.
and you're gonna make choices. And sometimes you're gonna tell me you don't want to make a choice. And then I'm going to say, well, then you're choosing this, and you're going to hate me and you might not come back.
Yep.
But I will always be honest with the process that we're in, because it does everybody a disservice to, like, lie and be like, oh no, you can cultivate the circle around you to do exactly, like, no, you cannot. You can bring the best
Mhm.
people possible around you, but you cannot control anything that they do. If they get angry and you decided you didn't want angry people around you, that is not a thing.
And and it's I think, there's many conversations I could have about that. But, one thing that we've always said from the very beginning for the past, I don't know, 5 years almost, like, well, 4.5 years, we're never going to tell you that there's a quick fix for anything,
No.
ever, because there isn't. There isn't. Are there techniques that work? Some work. Yep. Are there things that can help you manage it? Sure. But when we're looking for true freedom from our suffering, it's not an overnight thing, because it didn't happen overnight.
Right. That's
And
right.
and and not to mention all the other things that made it bigger than what it was in the original thing. So,
Mhm.
and it's not that you can't do it. I mean, Vanessa and I think are both, like, examples of how much you can heal and even enjoy and have wonderful lives without doing. There's no end game. We're not
Yeah.
healing to get to an end game.
Yeah.
It's a slow process of, oh, I'm triggered. Oh, there's another avenue for me to go work on and to redo what my healing process is, whether it's energy or whether it's actual psychotherapy. It's you're living your life, you're enjoying it, and something comes up, and then you take all the tools you have and the people that you use for support. eh, you just, that's the process, but you can still enjoy life
Yeah.
even if you're in process.
Yeah.
There's never going to be point A and point B. And I won't get into the rage that I feel about the diet industry.
Yeah.
um and but we have to understand is that if we're looking for quick fixes, we're going to be more than likely taken advantage of.
Yes. And thus more angry.
Right. And distrust, right?
Yeah.
Not only
Uh-huh.
distrust of the people and everybody else, but distrust of yourself for making a good decision.
Yep.
It just compounds that disconnection even more, which exacerbates the problem you were trying to solve to begin with.
Yeah.
So if anybody promises a quick fix or that it'll heal your life or make you rich or whatever it is you're trying to seek, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. if you're going in with the idea of I'm gaining information so that I can
Yeah.
create my own special plan, fantastic.
Yeah.
But if you're
Don't go with
going in,
desperation.
yeah,
No.
it just, it's whatever. Anyways, we could go on
Yeah.
about this stuff because this is what we do. But
This is what we did. This is what we feel. You know what I mean? Because we've been on all the ins and outs of so
we've
many of
tried
these
it.
things. Yeah, we've tried it. I was talking to a friend yesterday about it where I was like, "Yep, been there, did that out of desperation, right? Like I was doing it out of desperation, and guess what? That's why it didn't work. And do you know when things started to work? When I stopped being desperate about it. When I that surrender energy of being like, I'm just going to be an investigator."
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just gonna it's so hard to try to control outcomes. So hard.
I've been trying for 40 something years and it still
And it
hasn't
doesn't
worked.
work, right? Like, so how many times do you have to look around before you're like, has it
Yep.
worked? Look at your evidence. Where's your evidence? There is
Yeah.
none. It is always somewhat movable, right? Like somewhat. So that alone tells us like our belief systems, the more flexible we can let them be because we understand that we couldn't possibly know everything about something, or we couldn't possibly know the only way that is good. The easier we let that happen and feel safe in that energy, right? That's what it is we need to be able to feel safe in that uncertainty is actually a safe place. Then we'll have less of these issues that we're talking about, right? Like you when you look at like somebody who you think of as a highly spiritually connected person, how much rage do you see within them? How much sacred rage do you see within them? You don't, right? Because they've learned so much about their own belief systems that when something comes in to give them a trigger, it doesn't mean that they're not triggered. It just means that they don't let that rage take over. They allow themselves to process that very usually quickly, because they don't want to hold it. Right. So when we're talking about like all of these emotions and you start to think about like the most peaceful people on earth, when we're like, oh my God, Dalai Lama, like if you want Dalai Lama life, you've got to stop being ragey. That's just that, right? Like,
or avoiding it, right? The thing I think with spiritual people is that they're not afraid to sit with it and hear it and love it. Like they're not afraid for it to be present in their life because they've gained perspective of themselves and see it not as to use it as fuel to the fire of their actions, but to see it as part of the energy that is in them and how to understand it. It's more of a collective versus a rejection type of energy. So, yeah. Well, friends,
good talk.
Yeah, this was a good one. I feel like I don't know. Last couple ones we've been kind of like, this one I feel like we were engaged in.
Yeah, I'm like sweaty.
Powerful.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this before Wednesday night, remember we are going live tonight. And the link for donations is in the what is it called? The show notes. And
a little area of words.
Right where the words are. I don't even know if any of you listen to them, but it's there. Or go to our Forge Angels Facebook page or Instagram. The links to donate will be there. It is donation based as an energy exchange, so that there is a complete energy exchange. And so hope you join us. It's 8:30 on Wednesday, and I promise to post the podcast on Wednesday morning, if not Tuesday night. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. It was Thursday, and I'm like, I never did that. It was like, whoopsie.
All good.
That's how my week has been, friends.
Yeah.
So,
hey guys, guess what? It's just us.
Yeah.
We don't have a producer. We don't
have a team.
Yeah, we are the team. We are the team. Right?
we are all the things.
What you see, we did the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I hope you join us. And I hope you all have a good week. Remember to breathe and know that you have hope. All is not lost, depending on the outcome of this election, and that you will make it through this. And we can definitely take our fear, rage, anger, whatever into the direction of supporting change. We can, in whatever way that is. And not just to get our own way, but to protect ourselves and our rights. So, love you guys. See you next week.
Hey, love you. Thanks for listening.
We hope we gave you something to support your journey.
Check out our Facebook or Instagram page to connect with us.
Have a great week.